Sorry, can you repeat that? Because I'm pretty sure I just heard the most absurd thing in my entire life. Kate Winters adjusted her glasses on her nose and stared at the impeccably dressed man sitting across from her. The law office smelled of expensive leather and intimidation, two things she definitely couldn't afford. Miss Winters, the lawyer, Dr. Bartholomew Cromwell cleared his throat solemnly. As executor of your late Aunt Cordelia's will, I must inform you that she left behind a considerable debt, $300,000 to be exact. Kate's world collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. She worked as a librarian in a small town, earning just enough to pay rent on her tiny apartment and feed Fitzgerald, her orange tabby cat. $300,000 was more money than she'd see in a lifetime. But her voice came out as a whisper. Aunt Cordelia always said she had savings. She left me her house, didn't she? Ah, yes, about that. Dr. Cromwell shuffled through some papers with the enthusiasm of someone announcing rain at a wedding. The house was mortgaged 3 times. Actually, that's where most of the debt comes from. Kate felt her stomach sink to her feet. Her hands trembled as she gripped the handle of her vintage purse she'd bought at a thrift store. Is there any way to… Actually, a deep, velvety voice echoed through the room. There is. Kate turned in her chair and nearly choked on her own breath. The man who had just entered the office looked like he'd stepped directly from the pages of a men's magazine. Tall, dark-haired, with perfectly tousled locks and whiskey-colored eyes that could melt butter from 5 feet away. The suit he wore cost more than she made in a year. Mr. Michael Blackthorne, Dr. May. Cromwell immediately stood up, with a reverence that bordered on ridiculous. I wasn't expecting you today. Michael. Even his name sounded like sin wrapped in expensive gift paper. Change of plans, Michael said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were fixed on Kate, as if she were a puzzle he was deciding whether she was worth solving. May I have a few minutes alone with Miss Winters? Kate Winters, she completed, feeling her cheeks flush without permission. Why on earth was she blushing? The man hadn't even said hello properly. Kate! He repeated her name like it was a prayer, and she had to grip her chair to keep from melting right there. What an interesting name. Dr. Cromwell left the room with the haste of someone who had just received an imperial order, leaving them alone. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope, and Kate was certain she would fall at any moment. Michael approached her with calculated steps, like a predator circling its prey. He stopped right in front of her and leaned down, placing his hands on the arms of her chair. His masculine scent, something between noble wood and pure temptation, invaded Kate's senses. I have a proposition for you, he murmured, so close she could feel the warmth of his breath on her neck. What kind of proposition? She managed to whisper, hating how tremulous her voice sounded. Michael smiled, and this time the smile had something dangerous, predatory about it. The kind that will solve all your financial problems, in exchange for a small favor. Kate swallowed hard. In her limited but well-read experience through countless romance novels, when a rich and devastatingly attractive man offered to solve your problems in exchange for a small favor, it usually wasn't small at all. What favor? 30 days, he said, pulling back just enough to look her in the eyes. 30 days pretending to be my girlfriend. Kate's jaw practically hit the floor. Your… what? Girlfriend. Pretend you love me madly. Appear with me at some social events. Convince my family that I'm capable of maintaining a serious relationship. Michael straightened up and began pacing around the room as if he were discussing the weather. In return, I pay all your aunt's debts and give you an extra $100,000 to start a new life. Kate blinked several times, trying to process the information. Are you serious? I never joke about money. But why me? I mean… She gestured vaguely in his direction. Look at you. You must have women lining up to date you for real. Michael stopped pacing and stared at her with an indecipherably dark expression. Exactly why. I need someone who won't fall in love with me. Someone who understands this is just business. He tilted his head slightly. You seem sensible. Sensible. How did that sound like a backhanded compliment? And if I say no, then you walk out of here with a $300,000 debt and the prospect of working until you're 80 to pay it off. Michael shrugged with calculated indifference. Your choice. Kate felt a mixture of indignation and desperation bubbling in her chest. What kind of person made such a proposal? And what kind of person would she be if she accepted? I need to think. You have 5 minutes, Michael said, consulting a watch that looked like it cost more than a car. I have a meeting in 15 minutes. 5 minutes? For a decision that will change my entire life? Life changes in seconds, Kate. The 5 minutes are my courtesy. She stared at him, searching for some sign of humanity in those whiskey-colored eyes. There was something there, hidden pain, perhaps. But it disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it. Kate thought about her life, the tiny apartment, the poorly paid job, the loneliness that had accompanied her for years. She thought about Aunt Cordelia, who had always dreamed of traveling the world, but died without ever leaving her hometown. She thought about all the time she'd wished for an adventure, a chance to be someone else, even if just for a little while. And then she thought about what it would be like to kiss that perfect mouth, and immediately felt herself blush to her ears. All right, she said before she lost her courage. I accept. The smile that spread across Michael's face was triumphant and somehow slightly cruel. Excellent. Dr. Cromwell, he called, and the lawyer appeared at the door as if he'd been waiting behind it the whole time. Prepare the contract. Miss Winters and I have a deal. While Dr. Cromwell rushed to get the papers, Michael turned to Kate one last time. One last thing, he said with that velvety voice that did strange things to her nervous system. I hope you're a good actress, because if my family suspects this is fake, the deal is off. Kate nodded, still trying to believe what was happening. Can I ask a question? You may. Why do you need a fake girlfriend? I mean, what's the story behind this? Michael hesitated for a moment, and she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he leaned in again, whispering in her ear, Let's just say I promised my grandmother I'd bring someone special to her 90th birthday, and Cordelia Blackthorne always gets what she wants. Before Kate could fully process this information, or the fact that his breath in her ear gave her chills all over her body, Dr. Cromwell returned with a stack of papers. Sign here, here, and here, he said, pointing to various lines. Kate took the pen with trembling hands. It was an expensive pen, of course. Everything in that office was expensive. As she signed her name, she couldn't help but think she was signing much more than a contract. She was signing an adventure, a mystery, and possibly, if she wasn't careful, an epic heartbreak. Welcome to my world, Kate, Michael said when she finished signing. I hope you're prepared for the performance of your life. She stared at him, trying to appear more confident than she felt. Just don't forget this is just a job, Mr. Blackthorne, nothing more. His smile widened, and this time there was something genuinely amused about it. We'll see. And in that moment, as she put the papers in her purse and prepared to leave the office, Kate Winters had the distinct feeling that she had just made a deal with the devil. A devastatingly attractive devil, but still a devil. What she didn't know was that in the next 30 days, she would discover that even devils can have hearts. And some hearts are worth more than all the money in the world. Kate stared at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror and wondered if she was having some sort of psychological breakdown. The woman looking back at her bore little resemblance to the librarian who had walked into Saks Fifth Avenue 3 hours ago. I look like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life, she muttered, tugging at the hem of the emerald silk dress that cost more than her monthly salary. You look stunning, came Michael's voice from behind her, and she spun around so fast she nearly toppled over in the designer heels that felt like torture devices masquerading as footwear. He was leaning against the doorframe of the private dressing room, looking annoyingly perfect in his casual navy blazer and dark jeans. The man probably looked good in a potato sack, which was deeply unfair to the rest of humanity. These shoes are going to kill me, Kate complained, wobbling slightly. I'm going to faceplant in front of your family and blow our cover before we even get started. Michael's lips twitched with what might have been amusement. You'll get used to them. Easy for you to say. Your feet aren't being tortured by Italian leather death traps. Actually, he stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. I wanted to go over some ground rules before tonight's dinner. Kate's heart skipped as the space suddenly felt much smaller. Why did he have to smell so good? It was like he bathed in liquid temptation every morning. Ground rules? Michael pulled out his phone and began reading from what appeared to be an actual list. Of course he had a list. The man probably had a list for his lists. Rule 1. We've been together for 6 months. We met at a charity auction where you outbid me on a first edition Jane Austen. Jane Austen? Kate's eyebrows shot up. You actually know who Jane Austen is? I went to Harvard, not a cave, Michael replied dryly. Rule 2. You're madly in love with me, but you're not the clingy type. Affectionate, but independent. Kate snorted. Got it. Madly in love with your charming personality. Michael ignored her sarcasm. Rule 3. No one can know about the contract, not even after this is over. Rule 4. Kate interrupted, holding up a finger. I get to add some rules too. Michael looked surprised, as if the thought of her having opinions hadn't occurred to him. Such as? Such as you can't treat me like hired help in front of people. I won't be dismissed or ignored. If I'm playing your girlfriend, I'm playing an equal, not a doormat. Something shifted in Michael's expression. Respect, maybe? It was gone too quickly to tell. Fair enough. What else? Kate took a breath, gathering her courage. And you can't just touch me without warning. I know we need to look convincing, but I'd appreciate a heads up before any public displays of affection. Michael stepped closer, and Kate's breath caught. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently tucked a strand of her newly styled hair behind her ear. The simple touch sent electricity shooting down her spine. Like this? He murmured, his voice low and rough. Kate's mouth went dry. Yes. Exactly like that. For a moment, they stood frozen, his hand still cupping her cheek, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. His eyes dropped to her lips, and Kate thought she might actually stop breathing entirely. Then Michael's phone buzzed, shattering the moment like glass. He stepped back abruptly, checking his messages. The car's here. Ready to meet the family? Kate nodded, not trusting her voice. What the hell had just happened? And why was every nerve ending in her body still tingling? 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a mansion that looked like it had been transplanted directly from a fairy tale. Kate's jaw dropped as she took in the towering iron gates, the perfectly manicured gardens, and the house that was less house and more architectural masterpiece. You grew up here, she breathed. Unfortunately, Michael muttered, and there was something dark in his tone that made Kate look at him sharply. Before she could ask what he meant, the car door opened, and Michael was helping her out. His hand was warm and steady in hers, and she tried not to think about how natural it felt. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing an elegant woman in her 60s with Michael's eyes, and a smile that didn't quite reach them. "Michael, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing both his cheeks. "You're late." "Traffic, mother. This is Kate." Victoria Blackthorne turned her attention to Kate, and Kate felt like a bug under a microscope. The older woman's gaze swept over her from head to toe, cataloguing every detail. "How lovely," Victoria said finally, in a tone that suggested Kate was anything but. "I'm so curious to hear how you two met." "At a charity auction," Kate replied, proud that her voice sounded steady. "I outbid your son on a first edition Jane Austen." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Did you now? How aggressive of you." Kate felt Michael tense beside her, and she decided she didn't like Victoria Blackthorne very much. "I prefer determined," Kate said sweetly. "When I see something I want, I go after it." She felt Michael's surprised glance and suppressed a smile. Two could play at this game. They were ushered into a dining room that looked like it belonged in a museum, complete with a table that could seat 20 and a chandelier that probably cost more than Kate's childhood home. But it was the tiny, silver-haired woman at the head of the table who captured Kate's attention immediately. "Grandmother," Michael said, his entire demeanor softening as he approached her. "I'd like you to meet Kate." Cordelia Blackthorne looked up with bright, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She was barely 5 feet tall, but her presence filled the room. "So you're the one who's finally tamed my wild grandson," she said, her voice carrying a slight English accent. "Come here, child. Let me look at you properly." Kate approached, suddenly nervous. This woman was the reason she was here, the reason Michael needed a fake girlfriend. What if she didn't pass inspection? Cordelia took Kate's hands in her surprisingly strong ones and studied her face intently. "Beautiful," she pronounced finally. "But more importantly, intelligent. I can always tell." She patted Kate's cheek gently. Michael has excellent taste when he chooses to use it. Kate felt Michael's family's eyes on them, measuring, judging. She was acutely aware of being an outsider in this perfectly orchestrated world. "Tell me, dear," Cordelia continued, "what do you do?" "I'm a librarian," Kate said proudly, lifting her chin slightly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victoria's smile became positively arctic. "How quaint," she murmured. "I think it's wonderful," Cordelia said firmly, shooting her daughter-in-law a sharp look. "Someone who values knowledge and stories. Michael's always been too practical. He needs more stories in his life." During dinner, Kate found herself genuinely enjoying Cordelia's company. The old woman was sharp, funny, and had a wicked sense of humor that she wielded like a scalpel. But the rest of the family was another story entirely. Michael's brother Damien made several snide comments about appropriate social circles, while his sister-in-law Priscilla kept asking pointed questions about Kate's background with barely concealed disdain. Kate was beginning to understand why Michael needed armor in this house. "So Kate," Victoria said during dessert, her voice honey-sweet with underlying venom, "what are your intentions regarding my son?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kate felt Michael go rigid beside her. "I love him," Kate said simply, surprised by how easily the lie came. "He makes me laugh. He challenges me intellectually, and he has the kindest heart of anyone I've ever met." Michael turned to stare at her, something unreadable in his expression. "How romantic," Priscilla simpered. "And when might we expect an engagement announcement?" "Priscilla," Cordelia's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Must you be so vulgar? Let young people enjoy their courtship." Kate reached for her wine glass, her hand trembling slightly, and knocked it over. Red wine spread across the pristine white tablecloth like blood. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." Kate jumped up, mortified. "It's fine," Michael said quickly, standing beside her. "Just an accident." But Kate could see the satisfied smirks on several faces around the table. She'd just proven she didn't belong in their world. "Perhaps we should call it a night," Michael said, his jaw tight. As they said their goodbyes, Cordelia pulled Kate aside. "Don't let them intimidate you, dear," she whispered. "This family has forgotten that money is supposed to serve happiness, not the other way around." She squeezed Kate's hand. "You're good for him. I can see it in his eyes." In the car afterward, Kate slumped against the leather seat, emotionally drained. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I messed up with the wine." "You didn't mess up anything," Michael replied, his voice hard with anger. "They were testing you from the moment we walked in." Kate looked at him in the dim light of the car. "Your family doesn't like me very much." "My family doesn't like anyone who might actually make me happy," Michael said, then seemed to realize what he'd said. His jaw tightened. "I meant anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of suitable." But Kate had heard what he'd said first, and her heart did something complicated in her chest. Maybe this arrangement was going to be more dangerous than either of them had anticipated. Kate stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning, practicing her smile. 3 days had passed since the dinner from hell, and tonight was the annual Blackthorn Foundation charity gala. Her first major public appearance as Michael's girlfriend. "You can do this," she told her reflection, trying to ignore the fact that she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "You're just playing a part." A very complicated, emotionally confusing part that's starting to feel uncomfortably real. Fitzgerald meowed from his perch on the toilet seat, giving her a judgmental look that clearly said, "You're talking to yourself again, human." "Don't look at me like that," Kate muttered. "You try pretending to be in love with a man who makes your brain short-circuit every time he's within 5 feet of you." Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Picking you up at 7. Wear the blue dress." Kate stared at the message, annoyed by his commanding tone. She typed back, "Please wear the blue dress." 3 dots appeared, then, "Please." She smiled despite herself. Small victories. At exactly 7 p.m., Kate opened her apartment door wearing the midnight blue gown that made her feel like a princess and a fraud simultaneously. Michael stood in the hallway looking devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. "You look," Michael started, then seemed to lose his words. "Acceptable for public viewing," Kate supplied dryly. "Beautiful," he said quietly, and something in his voice made her heart skip. "You look beautiful, Kate." The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard, and she felt heat creep up her neck. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." In the car, Michael briefed her on the evening's attendees like a general preparing for battle. "Senator Morrison will be there with his wife. They're considering a major donation to our education initiative. The Weatherbys from the Art Museum Board. Oh, and my ex-fiancée." Kate's head snapped toward him. "You're what now?" "Vivian Sterling. We were engaged 2 years ago. It ended badly." "Define badly." Michael's jaw tightened. "She left me at the altar for a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley." Kate felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "She left you at the altar? Who does that?" "Someone who decided my net worth wasn't quite impressive enough," Michael said with bitter humor. "Don't worry, it's ancient history." But Kate could hear the hurt beneath his casual tone, and she found herself wanting to find this Vivian person and give her a piece of her mind. The Blackthorn Foundation Gala was being held at the Metropolitan Museum, and as their car pulled up to the red carpet, Kate's stomach performed an Olympic-level gymnastics routine. "Remember," Michael said as they stepped out into the flash of cameras, "we're madly in love." "Right," Kate breathed, then gasped as Michael's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her close against his side. The photographers went wild, shouting questions she couldn't quite hear over the blood rushing in her ears. "Smile," Michael murmured against her ear, and she did, hoping it looked more blissfully in love than terrified out of my mind. Inside the museum, the party was in full swing. The Egyptian wing had been transformed into an elegant ballroom, with crystalline lights casting everything in a golden glow. Kate felt like she'd stepped into a fairy tale, if fairy tales included champagne that cost more than her monthly grocery budget and enough diamonds to blind a small aircraft. "Michael, darling." Kate turned to see a statuesque blonde gliding toward them like a predator in designer silk. She was the kind of beautiful that belonged on magazine covers, with perfect features and an aura of untouchability. "Vivienne," Michael said evenly, his arm tightening almost imperceptibly around Kate's waist. So this was the woman who'd left Michael at the altar. Kate disliked her immediately. "And you must be the little librarian everyone's talking about," Vivian said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "How refreshing." The way she said refreshing made it sound like a communicable disease. "And you must be the woman with spectacularly bad timing," Kate replied sweetly. "How unfortunate." Vivian's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "I see Michael's taste has become more adventurous." "I prefer to think of it as evolved," Michael said coolly. Kate felt a warm glow at his defense of her. but Vivian wasn't finished. "I do hope you're not getting too attached, dear," she said to Kate with fake concern. "Michael has such a short attention span when it comes to projects." The word projects hit Kate like a slap. It was exactly what she was, wasn't it? A project, a business arrangement, a temporary fix to a family problem. "If you'll excuse us," Michael said, steering Kate away before she could respond. They found themselves on the museum's outdoor terrace, the city lights twinkling below them like fallen stars. "Don't listen to her," Michael said immediately. "Vivian has a talent for finding people's weak spots and pressing hard." "She's not wrong, though, is she?" Kate turned to face him, suddenly feeling exhausted. "I am just a project to you. A problem you're paying someone to solve." Michael's expression tightened. It's more complicated than that." "How is it complicated? You're paying me to pretend to love you for 30 days. It's the definition of a transaction." "Kate, don't." She held up a hand, stepping back from him. "I just need a minute to remember what this is, what we're doing here." But even as she said it, Kate wasn't sure she believed it anymore. The way Michael had defended her, the gentleness in his touch, the hurt in his eyes when he'd talked about Vivian, none of it felt like an act. They were interrupted by the arrival of Cordelia Blackthorne, resplendent in royal purple and leaning on an ornate walking stick. "There you are," she exclaimed. "I've been looking everywhere for you two. Kate, dear, you look absolutely radiant." "Thank you, Mrs. Blackthorne. Please call me grandmother, I insist." Cordelia's eyes were twinkling with mischief. "Now, I have a very important favor to ask. Would you two mind dancing for the crowd? They've been asking for the mystery girlfriend to make an appearance on the dance floor." Kate felt panic rise in her throat. "Oh, I'm not a very good dancer." "Nonsense." Cordelia waved away her protests. "Michael will lead. He's been taking lessons since he was 6. Rather like riding a bicycle, I imagine." Before Kate could protest further, Michael had taken her hand and was leading her back inside to the makeshift dance floor. The band was playing something slow and romantic, and Kate's heart hammered against her ribs as Michael pulled her into his arms. "Just follow my lead," he murmured, one hand settling at her waist, the other taking her hand in his. And then they were moving, swaying together to the music, and Kate discovered that Michael was indeed an excellent dancer. He guided her effortlessly across the floor, and she found herself relaxing into his embrace despite everything. "See?" he said softly. "You're a natural." Kate looked up at him, and the tenderness in his expression made her breath catch. For a moment it felt like they were the only two people in the room, lost in their own private world. "Michael," she started to say. But then she caught sight of Vivian watching them from the edge of the dance floor, her expression venomous. The spell broke, and reality came crashing back. This was all performance, all for show. "I need some air," Kate said abruptly, pulling away from him. "Kate, wait." But she was already pushing through the crowd, desperately seeking escape. She found herself in a quiet corridor lined with Roman sculptures, their marble faces bearing witness to her emotional meltdown. She heard footsteps behind her and turned, expecting Michael. Instead, she found herself face to face with Damien Blackthorne, Michael's brother. "Having second thoughts about the family business?" he asked with a smirk that was nothing like Michael's. "I'm sorry?" "Oh, come now. We both know what this is." Damien stepped closer, and Kate caught the smell of whiskey on his breath. "Michael's paying you to play dress-up, isn't he? The question is, how much?" Kate felt ice form in her stomach. "I don't know what you're talking about." 100,000? 200? My brother's always been generous when he wants something. Damien's eyes raked over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Though I have to say, his taste is improving. You're much prettier than his usual charity cases." "You're drunk," Kate said, trying to step around him. But Damien blocked her path. "Here's the thing, sweetheart. I know all about Michael's little schemes, and I know exactly how this ends." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He uses you, then discards you. It's what he does. Kate felt something cold and final settle in her chest. Because despite everything, despite the gentleness in Michael's touch, the way he'd defended her, the moments when she'd almost believed this could be real, Damien was right. This was always going to end. In less than 4 weeks, she'd be back to her old life, and Michael would move on to whatever came next. The realization hurt more than it should have. "Kate!" Michael's voice echoed down the corridor, and she saw him striding toward them, his expression thunderous when he saw his brother cornering her. "Damien, what the hell are you doing?" "Just getting to know your girlfriend better," Damien said with false innocence. "Lovely girl, very accommodating." Michael's hands clenched into fists, and Kate quickly stepped between them. "It's fine," she said quietly. "I think I'd like to go home now." Michael studied her face, seeing something there that made his expression soften with concern. "Of course. Let me just—" "No," Kate said more sharply than she intended. "I mean, I can catch a cab. You should stay. This is your event." "Kate." But she was already walking away, leaving both Blackthorne brothers behind in the corridor filled with silent marble witnesses to her breaking heart. Outside, as she waited for her taxi, Kate realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She was falling in love with Michael Blackthorne, and that was the one thing her contract definitely didn't cover. Kate spent the entire next day avoiding Michael's calls, texts, and the increasingly frantic knocking at her apartment door. She'd turned off her phone after the 15th text message and was currently hiding behind her couch like a fugitive, eating ice cream straight from the container while Fitzgerald judged her life choices from his perch on the windowsill. "Don't look at me like that," she muttered to the cat. "You've never been in love with someone who's paying you to pretend to love them. It's complicated." Fitzgerald's tail twitched in what Kate chose to interpret as sympathy rather than disdain. The knocking started again, more insistent this time. "Kate, I know you're in there. Your neighbor Mrs. Chen told me she saw you come home last night." Traitor, Kate thought grimly. She'd have to have words with Mrs. Chen about the sanctity of neighborly secrets. "I'm not leaving until we talk," Michael called through the door. Kate groaned and buried her face in a couch cushion. The man was nothing if not persistent. 20 minutes later, the knocking stopped, and Kate allowed herself a moment of relief. Maybe he'd finally given up. Maybe she could. The fire escape window slid open with a metallic screech. Kate shot upright, ice cream flying everywhere, as Michael Blackthorne climbed through her third-floor window like some sort of tuxedo-wearing cat burglar. "Are you insane?" she shrieked, scrambling to her feet. "You could have fallen." "You weren't answering your door," Michael said matter-of-factly, brushing imaginary dust off his expensive suit. "Or your phone. I was starting to worry you'd been kidnapped. So you decided to commit breaking and entering instead. Technically, it's just entering. Your window was unlocked." Michael looked around her tiny apartment, taking in the mismatched furniture, overflowing bookshelves, and general chaos. "We need to talk about last night." "No, we don't." Kate crossed her arms defensively, acutely aware that she was wearing her rattiest pajamas and had ice cream in her hair. "Last night was perfectly clear. Your brother spelled out exactly what this arrangement is in case I was getting confused about my place." Michael's expression darkened. "Damien is a bitter drunk who gets off on hurting people. You can't listen to—" "He's not wrong, though, is he?" Kate interrupted, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "This is temporary. I'm temporary. In 3.5 weeks this ends, and you go back to your real life." "Kate, I need to remember that," she continued, more to herself than to him. "I can't afford to forget what this is." Michael was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with those impossibly perceptive eyes. "What if I told you I don't want it to be temporary?" Kate's breath caught. "What? What if I told you that somewhere between that first day in the lawyer's office and last night's disaster, this stopped being about my grandmother's expectations and started being about something else entirely?" Kate felt her heart stutter against her ribs. "Michael, don't what?" Don't tell you that I look forward to your texts every morning? That I've started buying Jane Austen novels just because they remind me of you? That when you walked away last night, it felt like someone had ripped out part of my chest? Each word hit Kate like a physical blow, and she had to grip the back of her chair to stay upright. You can't say things like that, she whispered. Why not, if they're true? Because... Kate struggled to find the words, her carefully constructed walls crumbling. Because I signed a contract to pretend to love you, and somewhere along the way, I forgot it was supposed to be pretending. The admission hung between them like a live wire, crackling with dangerous possibilities. Michael took a step closer, then another, until he was standing directly in front of her. Kate, he said softly, reaching out to cup her face in his hands. What if we tore up the contract? Her eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for hours. And then what? I'm still a small-town librarian, and you're still... you. This isn't a fairy tale, Michael. It's real life. And in real life, people like me don't get happily ever after with people like you. People like me? Michael's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. You mean people who've spent their entire lives surrounded by sharks masquerading as family members? People who've never had a genuine conversation until they met a librarian who quotes Austen and isn't impressed by their bank account? Michael, I've been sleepwalking through my life for 32 years, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. And then you walked into that office in your vintage dress and your fierce independence, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be alive. Kate closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every instinct telling her to run. This is crazy, she breathed. The best things usually are. Before Kate could overthink it, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative. But then Michael's arms came around her, and she forgot about contracts and class differences and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. The kiss deepened, and Kate felt like she was drowning in the best possible way. Michael tasted like coffee and possibilities, and when he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Well, Kate said shakily, that definitely wasn't in the contract. Michael laughed, and the sound was so purely happy that it made Kate's heart ache. Definitely not, he agreed, resting his forehead against hers. They were interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. NYPD, open up! Kate and Michael froze, staring at each other in panic. Did you seriously trigger a breaking and entering call? Kate hissed. It's possible Mrs. Chen is more observant than I gave her credit for, Michael admitted sheepishly. NYPD, we know someone's in there, Kate groaned and went to the door. Officers, there's been a misunderstanding. 20 minutes later, after Michael had charmed his way out of potential arrest charges and Kate had convinced the police that yes, she did know the man who'd climbed through her window, they found themselves alone again. Well, Kate said, collapsing onto her couch. That was mortifying. Could have been worse, Michael said, sitting beside her. At least they didn't arrest me. Yet, Kate pointed out. The day's still young. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their earlier conversation settling around them. So, Kate said finally, what happens now? Michael took her hand, threading their fingers together. Now we figure it out as we go. No contracts, no rules, no timeline. Just us. Just us. Kate looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. Your family is going to hate this, she said. Most of them already do, Michael replied cheerfully. But grandmother will be thrilled. She's been trying to matchmake me for years. And Vivian? Michael's expression hardened slightly. Vivian can go to hell. She had her chance and chose money over love. I'm not making the same mistake. Kate felt a warm glow spread through her chest. So you're choosing love? Michael brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. I'm choosing you, he said simply. Everything else is just details. Kate felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different tears. Happy ones, hopeful ones. I should probably warn you, she said. I'm a terrible fake girlfriend, but I might be an even worse real one. Michael grinned, that devastating smile that had been haunting her dreams. Lucky for you, I'm excellent at being a real boyfriend. I've been practicing for 32 years. Practicing? Waiting, he corrected softly. Waiting for someone worth the practice. And as Michael kissed her again, Kate realized that sometimes the best love stories started with the worst contracts. Outside her window, Mrs. Chen peered through her curtains and smiled. She'd always had a good feeling about that young man, even if his methods were unconventional. Some people just needed a little push toward their destiny, even if that push involved the NYPD and a fire escape. 3 blissful days. That's how long Kate and Michael had before everything went spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. Kate was humming while shelving returned books at the library, a dopey smile permanently etched on her face. Mrs. Patterson, the head librarian, had already commented twice on her unusual cheerfulness, but Kate didn't care. She was in love, properly in love, and the man she loved actually loved her back. It felt like living in a romance novel, except better because it was real. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Lunch? I'm outside. Kate peered through the library windows and spotted his sleek black car parked across the street. Michael was leaning against it, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread, and her heart did that fluttery thing it had been doing constantly since their fire escape conversation. Mrs. Patterson, I'm taking my lunch break, Kate called, already grabbing her purse. Take your time, dear, the older woman replied with a knowing smile. Young love should be savored. Kate practically floated across the street and into Michael's arms. He spun her around before setting her down and kissing her soundly, right there on the sidewalk for everyone to see. Public displays of affection, Mr. Blackthorne, Kate teased. How scandalous. I'm a changed man, Michael grinned. You've corrupted me completely. They were walking toward a small cafe when a sleek silver car pulled up beside them. The window rolled down to reveal Victoria Blackthorne's perfectly composed face, but her eyes were cold as winter. Michael, she said smoothly. Miss Winters, how convenient to run into you both. Kate felt Michael tense beside her, his hand tightening protectively around hers. Mother, what brings you to this part of town? Oh, just running some errands, Victoria replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Though I'm glad I found you. There's something we need to discuss. Family business. Whatever it is can wait, Michael said firmly. I'm afraid it can't. Victoria's gaze shifted to Kate, and Kate felt like she was being dissected by a particularly skilled surgeon. Miss Winters, would you mind giving us a moment? Family matters, you understand. Kate started to protest, but Michael squeezed her hand. It's fine, he said quietly. I'll just be a minute. Against her better judgment, Kate stepped away, but she stayed close enough to see the tension in Michael's shoulders as he approached his mother's car. Victoria spoke in low, urgent tones, and Kate watched Michael's expression grow darker with each word. Finally, he stepped back from the car, his face pale. We'll discuss this later, he said tersely. Tomorrow, Michael. This can't wait any longer. Victoria's window rolled up, and the car glided away like a predator returning to the shadows. What was that about? Kate asked as Michael rejoined her. Nothing important, he said, but his smile looked forced. Just family drama. You know how it is. Kate didn't know how it was, actually. Her small family had been loving and uncomplicated, but she could see that whatever Victoria had said had shaken Michael to his core. Over lunch, Michael seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly and giving distracted answers to Kate's questions. By the time they parted ways, Kate was genuinely worried. Are you sure everything's okay? She asked as he walked her back to the library. Of course, Michael said, but he kissed her goodbye with an urgency that felt like desperation. Kate watched his car disappear down the street with a growing sense of unease. That evening, Michael was supposed to pick her up for dinner, but he texted to cancel at the last minute. Family emergency. Rain check? Kate tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. She told herself not to worry. He'd said it was a family emergency after all. Rich families probably had all sorts of complicated dramas she couldn't understand. But when the same thing happened the next night, and the night after that, Kate's worry transformed into something closer to panic. On Thursday morning, she was restocking the romance section, with perhaps more aggression than necessary, when Cordelia Blackthorne walked into the library. Kate blinked, certain she was hallucinating. The elegant elderly woman looked completely out of place among the worn chairs and fluorescent lighting, like a duchess who had wandered into a corner store. "Mrs. Grandmother," Kate stammered, abandoning her books. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you, dear," Cordelia said, her usual warmth notably absent. "We need to talk." Kate's blood turned to ice. "Is Michael okay? Has something happened?" "In a manner of speaking, yes." Cordelia settled into one of the reading chairs with the dignity of a queen claiming her throne. "Tell me, dear, what do you know about Blackthorne Industries' current financial situation?" Kate blinked in confusion. "Nothing. I assume it's fine? Michael never talks about business with me." "Of course he doesn't," Cordelia sighed. "That boy has always tried to shoulder everything alone." She fixed Kate with a penetrating stare. "The company is in trouble, dear. Serious trouble. A hostile takeover attempt that could destroy everything my late husband built." Kate's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair opposite Cordelia. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with me? Victoria has made it clear that Michael's relationship choices are being used as ammunition against the family. Questions about his judgment, his stability, his commitment to the company legacy." Cordelia's voice was gentle but firm. "She's convinced the board that his involvement with someone so far outside their social circle shows poor decision-making." Each word hit Kate like a physical blow. "So I'm the problem." "You're being made into the problem," Cordelia corrected. "There's a difference. Is that why Michael's been avoiding me? Because his family told him I was bad for business?" Cordelia's expression softened with sympathy. "Michael doesn't know I'm here. He's been trying to handle this on his own, the stubborn fool. He thinks he can have both, save the company, and keep you. But Victoria has made it clear that's not an option." Kate felt tears burning behind her eyes. "So what are you asking me to do?" "I'm not asking anything, dear. I'm simply telling you the truth." Cordelia reached over and patted Kate's hand. "What you do with that truth is entirely up to you." After Cordelia left, Kate sat alone in the empty library, feeling like her world was crumbling around her. Everything made sense now. Michael's distraction, the cancelled dates, the way he'd looked when his mother had cornered them on the street. She was going to cost him everything. That evening, Michael finally showed up at her apartment, looking haggard and exhausted. The moment Kate opened the door, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with desperate intensity. "I've missed you so much," he breathed against her hair. "I'm sorry I've been so distant. There's just been so much." "I know," Kate said quietly, and something in her tone made him pull back to look at her. "What's wrong?" Kate took a shaky breath. "Your grandmother came to see me today." Michael went very still. "What did she tell you?" "The truth. About the company, about what your relationship with me is costing you." Michael closed his eyes, his jaw clenching. "Damn it. I specifically asked her not to. So it's true. You're going to lose everything because of me." "Kate, it's not that simple. Isn't it?" Kate stepped out of his arms, wrapping her own around herself protectively. "Your family is right, Michael. I don't belong in your world. I never did." "That's not true. Look at me." Kate gestured to her small apartment, her second-hand clothes, her ordinary life. "Look at where I come from, and look at what you stand to lose." "How is that not true?" Michael reached for her, but she backed away. "I won't be the reason you lose your family's legacy," she said, her voice breaking. "I won't be the reason you have nothing left. You're not listening to me." Michael said desperately. None of that matters. The company, the money, my family's approval. None of it means anything without you. It has to mean something, Kate whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Because if it doesn't, then what kind of person would I be to let you throw it all away for me? The kind of person worth throwing it all away for. Kate's heart shattered at the raw honesty in his voice, but she forced herself to stay strong. I can't let you do that. So what are you saying? Kate closed her eyes, gathering the courage for the hardest words she'd ever had to speak. I'm saying this was always going to end. We both knew that from the beginning. Kate, no. I'm saying that maybe we should end it now, before either of us gets hurt any worse. Michael stared at her in stunned silence, and Kate could see her words hitting him like physical blows. You don't mean that. I do, Kate lied, the words tasting like poison on her tongue. This was fun, Michael, but it was never real. Not really. The light died in Michael's eyes, and Kate had to grip the doorframe to keep from collapsing. I see, he said quietly, his voice carefully controlled. Well, I suppose that settles it then. He turned to leave, and Kate almost called out to him, almost told him the truth, that she loved him so much it felt like dying, that breaking up with him was destroying her, that she was only doing this to save him. But she didn't. Instead, she watched the man she loved walk out of her life, believing she didn't love him at all. Only after she heard his car drive away did she allow herself to collapse, sobbing into her hands while Fitzgerald meowed anxiously from his perch on the windowsill. Outside, rain began to fall, as if the sky itself was crying for their shattered love story. And in his car, Michael gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white, trying to convince himself that Kate was right, that it had never been real, that he was better off without her. But the ache in his chest suggested otherwise. Sometimes love meant letting go, even when letting go felt like dying. 2 weeks. It had been 2 weeks since Kate had ripped her own heart out and handed it to Michael on a silver platter of lies, and she was barely functioning. She'd called in sick to work 3 times, lived on a diet of ice cream and regret, and had watched every romantic movie in her collection while sobbing into Fitzgerald's increasingly concerned orange fur. The cat had taken to bringing her dead mice as offerings, which Kate chose to interpret as sympathy gifts rather than commentary on her current life status. I know, Fitz, she sniffled, scratching behind his ears as he purred on her lap. I'm pathetic. But it was the right thing to do, wasn't it? He's better off without me dragging down his perfect life. Fitzgerald meowed in what sounded suspiciously like disagreement. Kate was in the middle of her 4th viewing of Pride and Prejudice, the Colin Firth version, obviously, when someone knocked on her door. She considered ignoring it. She'd been ignoring most of human contact lately, but the knocking persisted with the determination of someone who wasn't going away. Kate, open this door right now, or I'm calling the fire department to break it down. Kate recognized the voice and groaned. Somehow Cordelia Blackthorne had gotten her phone number and had been calling daily, leaving increasingly creative voicemails that ranged from concerned grandmother to military general planning a campaign. Go away, Kate called weakly. Absolutely not. I've brought reinforcements. Curious despite herself, Kate shuffled to the door and peered through the peephole. Cordelia stood in the hallway, looking impeccable as always. But she wasn't alone. Mrs. Chen from next door was there too, holding what appeared to be a casserole dish and wearing a determined expression. Mrs. Chen? Kate opened the door in confusion. What are you doing with... Intervention, Mrs. Chen announced briskly, pushing past Kate into the apartment. This one, she gestured to Cordelia, says you're pining away for love. Very romantic. Very stupid. I invited Mrs. Chen for tea yesterday, Cordelia explained, following them inside. Lovely woman. We had a fascinating conversation about stubborn young people who make terrible decisions in the name of nobility. Kate stared at them both. You can't just... Invade my apartment. Child, look at yourself, Cordelia said gently. When was the last time you brushed your hair? Or changed out of those pajamas? Kate caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror and winced. She looked like she'd been dragged through a hedge backwards, possibly by someone who really had it in for hedges. Sit, Mrs. Chen commanded, pointing to the couch. We talk now. Too emotionally exhausted to argue, Kate slumped onto the couch between the two older women, feeling like she was about to face a firing squad made up of grandmothers. Now then, Cordelia began, I want you to tell me exactly why you broke that boy's heart. I didn't break his heart, Kate protested weakly. I saved his future, his company, his family's legacy. His company is fine, Cordelia said briskly. Kate blinked. What? The takeover attempt failed. Michael handled it brilliantly, actually. Reminded me of his grandfather. Cordelia's eyes twinkled with pride. Of course, he might have handled it even better if he hadn't been walking around like a zombie for the past 2 weeks. But you said... I said the company was in trouble, and it was. But Michael is more resourceful than his mother gives him credit for. He found alternative financing, restructured some divisions, and managed to turn a crisis into an opportunity. Cordelia leaned forward. The company is stronger now than it's been in years. Kate felt like the world was spinning off its axis. Then why did you tell me? Because I was testing you, dear. I needed to know what kind of person you were. Would you run at the first sign of trouble? Or would you sacrifice your own happiness for Michael's well-being? Kate struggled to process this. That's horrible. Yes, it was rather manipulative of me, Cordelia admitted, without a trace of remorse. But necessary. You see, the last woman Michael cared about chose money over love. I needed to know you'd choose love over money. But I didn't choose love, Kate protested. I chose his future over my happiness. Exactly, Cordelia beamed, which proves you love him more than you love yourself. Though I must say, the execution was terrible. Breaking up with him and pretending you never cared? Really, dear, that's the sort of dramatic nonsense you'd find in a bad novel. Mrs. Chen nodded sagely. Young people always think they know best. Very dramatic, very foolish. Kate buried her face in her hands. Oh, God. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Not everything, Cordelia said thoughtfully. Though you've certainly made a mess of things. Michael's been impossible to live with. Victoria actually called to complain that he's become so unpleasant that even she feels sorry for him. He hates me now, Kate whispered. Nonsense. He's heartbroken, which is entirely different. Cordelia stood up, with the decisiveness of someone who had made up her mind about something. Mrs. Chen, would you mind keeping an eye on Kate while I make a phone call? Where are you going? Kate asked frantically. To fix this mess, Cordelia replied. Though you're going to have to do most of the work yourself. I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make it drink. After Cordelia left, Mrs. Chen settled back on the couch with her casserole and fixed Kate with a stern look. You love him? Kate nodded miserably. He loves you? Another nod. Then why are you both being stupid? It's complicated. Mrs. Chen waved dismissively. Love not complicated. People make it complicated. You love, you fight for love. Simple. But his family not living your life. You are. Mrs. Chen patted Kate's knee with surprising gentleness. My husband and I, we from different worlds too. His family not approve. My family not approve. We marry anyway, 43 years next month. What if Michael won't forgive me? Then you make him forgive you. Grand gesture. Very important in love story. Before Kate could ask what kind of grand gesture, her phone rang. The caller ID made her heart stop. Michael. She stared at the phone in panic as it rang. Answer, Mrs. Chen commanded. Kate's hand shook as she accepted the call. "Hello? Kate." Michael's voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear something underneath it. Pain, exhaustion, hope. "We need to talk." "Michael, I'm outside." Kate ran to the window and looked down. Sure enough, there was Michael's car parked on the street, and she could see his silhouette in the driver's seat. "I'll be right down," she said, then hung up and looked at Mrs. Chen in panic. "I can't go down there looking like this." "You go exactly like that," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "He needs to see what losing you has done to you, just like you need to see what losing him has done to him." 5 minutes later, Kate stood on the sidewalk in her pajamas and slippers, feeling more vulnerable than she'd ever felt in her life. Michael got out of his car slowly, and Kate's heart clenched at the sight of him. He looked terrible, hollow-eyed, unshaven, like he hadn't slept in weeks. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other across the space that felt like a chasm. "You look awful," Michael said finally. "You too," Kate replied, and despite everything, she almost smiled. "Grandmother told me about your conversation, about what she said to you." Kate's cheeks burned with shame. "Michael, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just being a coward. I should have talked to you instead of making decisions for both of us." "Yes, you should have," Michael agreed, and Kate's heart sank. But then he stepped closer. "Just like I should have told you about the company troubles instead of trying to handle everything alone." "I hurt you," Kate whispered, tears starting to fall. "I made you think I didn't love you. And that was the cruelest lie I've ever told." "It was," Michael said quietly, close enough now that she could see the pain in his eyes. "But I understand why you did it. Can you ever forgive me?" Michael reached up and cupped her face in his hands, just like he had that day in her apartment. "Kate," he said softly, "I forgave you the moment I realized what you'd done. The question is, can you forgive yourself?" And then he was kissing her, right there on the sidewalk in front of God and Mrs. Chen's nosy neighbors, and Kate felt like she could finally breathe again for the first time in 2 weeks. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. "I love you," Kate said, the words tumbling out like a dam had burst. "I love you so much, and I'm never lying about it again, not even to protect you." "Good," Michael said, resting his forehead against hers. "Because I love you too, and I'm tired of pretending that anything else matters more than that." From her window 3 floors up, Mrs. Chen smiled and closed her curtains, satisfied with a job well done. Sometimes all love needed was a little push from a couple of interfering grandmothers and a wise neighbor with a casserole. And sometimes the best grand gesture was simply telling the truth. 3 days after their tearful reconciliation on the sidewalk, Kate found herself facing her biggest challenge yet, Cordelia Blackthorne's actual 90th birthday party. Not the small family dinner she'd expected, but a full-blown society extravaganza with 300 guests, 4 orchestras, and enough flowers to stock a small country. "I feel like I'm going to throw up," Kate confided to Michael as their car pulled up to the Blackthorne estate, which had been transformed into something resembling Versailles during its heyday. "You'll be fine." Michael squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Besides, Grandmother specifically requested that you sit next to her during dinner. You're officially the favorite grandchild-in-law." "We're not married," Kate pointed out, trying not to hyperventilate as she watched actual celebrities stepping out of limousines ahead of them. "Yet," Michael said with a grin that made her stomach do acrobatics for entirely different reasons. "Michael Blackthorne, did I just what?" he asked innocently, but his eyes were dancing with mischief. Before Kate could interrogate him further, their car door opened, and they were swept into the glittering chaos of high society at its most peacocky. Kate had thought the charity gala was overwhelming, but this was on another level entirely. Ice sculptures the size of small buildings, champagne fountains that probably cost more than her annual salary, and enough diamonds to blind a small aircraft. "Kate, darling." Cordelia appeared at their side, magnificent in royal blue silk, and enough sapphires to make a queen weep with envy. You look absolutely radiant. That dress is perfect on you. Kate smoothed down the emerald silk gown that Michael had insisted on buying for her, still not quite comfortable with wearing something that cost more than her monthly rent. Thank you, grandmother, and happy birthday. 90 years old and still causing trouble, Cordelia winked. Come, there are some people I want you to meet. What followed was a whirlwind introduction to New York's elite, and Kate was surprised to find that most of them were actually quite pleasant. A few were clearly Victoria's allies, offering polite smiles with shark eyes. But the majority seemed genuinely curious about the woman who had apparently tamed the infamous Michael Blackthorne. So you're the librarian, said Senator Morrison, the same man Michael had mentioned at the charity gala. My wife tells me you have a master's degree in literature from Columbia. Yes, sir. I specialized in 19th century British fiction. Fascinating. My daughter is studying at Columbia now. Literature as well. Perhaps you two could meet sometime. Kate felt a warm glow as she realized that not everyone saw her as just the librarian. Some people actually respected her education and intelligence. Michael's hand found hers under the table, and when she looked at him, his expression was pure pride. The evening progressed smoothly until dinner, when Victoria stood to give a toast. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the vast dining room. We're here tonight to celebrate my mother-in-law, the incomparable Cordelia Blackthorne, a woman who has always valued family, tradition, and— Her eyes found Kate across the room. Appropriate matches. Kate felt ice form in her stomach. Even Michael tensed beside her. Cordelia has always believed that the Blackthorne name should be preserved and protected by those who understand its value, its history, and its importance to our community. Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Which is why I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear that Vivian Sterling has returned from Europe and is eager to reconnect with old friends. A murmur went through the crowd as Vivian glided into the dining room like a vengeful swan, dressed in white silk that probably cost more than Kate's car. She made her way directly to their table, her smile predatory. Michael, darling, she purred, leaning down to air-kiss his cheek. I've missed you so much. We have so much to catch up on. Michael went rigid. Vivian, I thought you were in Monaco. I was, but when I heard about Grandmother Cordelia's birthday, I simply had to come back. Some things are more important than European vacations. Her eyes flicked to Kate dismissively. Even if it means interrupting, whatever this is. Kate felt every eye in the room on them, watching like spectators at a gladiator fight. Her fight-or-flight instinct was screaming at her to run, but then she caught sight of Cordelia's expression. The old woman was watching intently, not with concern, but with what looked suspiciously like anticipation. This was another test. Kate stood up slowly, her champagne glass in hand, and the room fell silent. Vivienne, she said with a smile that could have powered small cities. How lovely to finally meet the woman who gave Michael the greatest gift of his life. Vivian's eyebrows shot up. Gift? The gift of learning what love isn't, Kate continued, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. You see, when someone truly loves you, they don't abandon you at the altar for a better offer. They don't treat you like a business transaction or a stepping stone to something better. Michael was staring at her in amazement, but Kate was just getting started. When someone truly loves you, they choose you even when it's difficult. Even when your family disapproves, even when it might cost them something, even when it would be easier to walk away. Kate's voice grew stronger with each word. Real love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into your existing life. It's about finding someone worth changing your life for. She turned to look at Michael, her heart overflowing with everything she felt for him. Michael is worth changing my life for, and I like to think I'm worth changing his life for too. The room erupted in applause, but Kate only had eyes for Michael, who was looking at her like she'd just moved mountains with her bare hands. Vivian's face had gone through several interesting color changes before settling on an unflattering shade of red. Well, she said stiffly, I can see when I'm not wanted." "Finally," Cordelia spoke up from her seat, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "It only took you 2 years to figure that out." As Vivian stalked away in defeat, Victoria looked like she'd swallowed something particularly unpleasant. The rest of the room was buzzing with excitement, clearly delighted by the evening's entertainment. Michael stood up and pulled Kate into his arms, spinning her around right there in front of everyone. "That," he said when he set her down, "was the most magnificent thing I've ever witnessed." "I can't believe I just did that," Kate breathed, her adrenaline finally catching up with her. "I can," Cordelia said, beaming at them both. "That, my dear children, is what we call a spine, and it's about time this family had more of them." Later, after the party had moved to the ballroom for dancing, Kate found herself alone on the terrace with Michael, swaying to the distant sound of music. "I have something for you," Michael said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Kate's heart stopped. "Michael, it's not what you think," he said quickly, then paused. "Well, it's not what you think yet." He opened the box to reveal not an engagement ring, but a delicate necklace with a small golden key pendant. "It's the key to my apartment," he explained, fastening it around her neck with gentle fingers. "I want you to move in with me. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to learn all your terrible morning habits and let you reorganize my entire life." Kate touched the key, feeling its weight against her skin. "Michael, are you sure? Your family—" "My family will learn to deal with it," Michael said firmly. "The only opinion that matters to me is yours. And grandmother's, obviously. But she adores you." Kate laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "What about my terrible apartment and my judgmental cat? Fitzgerald can have his own room. I'll have my people call his people." "His people?" "Mrs. Chen, obviously. She's clearly his agent in all matters concerning your happiness." Kate stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the simple gesture. "Is that a yes?" Michael asked against her lips. "That's a yes to everything," Kate whispered. "Moving in, annoying your family, letting you reorganize my entire life right back. And the other thing? The thing I haven't asked yet, but am definitely planning to ask?" Kate's heart skipped several beats. "What other thing?" Michael grinned, that devastating smile that had been her downfall from the very beginning. "You'll just have to wait and see." As they danced under the stars, Kate couldn't help but think that sometimes the best love stories started with the worst contracts. And sometimes the most beautiful endings were really just the beginning of something even better. Inside the ballroom, Cordelia watched them through the French doors and smiled. Mission accomplished. Now, about that great-grandchild situation. 6 months later, Kate was sitting in the very same lawyer's office where this whole adventure had begun, but this time, everything was different. Gone were her thrift store clothes and nervous fidgeting. In their place sat a confident woman in a tailored blazer, holding the hand of the man she loved more than her next breath. Dr. Bartholomew Cromwell cleared his throat ceremoniously. "Miss Winters, Mr. Blackthorne, thank you for coming in today to finalize the dissolution of your original arrangement." Kate and Michael exchanged amused glances. Their arrangement had evolved into something neither of them could have anticipated that first day. "The contract is hereby declared null and void," Dr. Cromwell continued, "as all terms have been creatively exceeded." "Creatively exceeded?" Kate raised an eyebrow. "Well," the lawyer said with the first genuine smile Kate had ever seen from him, "the contract specified 30 days of fake dating. You've now been genuinely dating for 6 months, living together for 4 months, and—" He gestured to Michael. "I believe there are some additional developments?" Michael grinned and pulled out a familiar velvet box, but this time it wasn't a key. Kate's heart stopped as he dropped to one knee right there in the stuffy legal office. "Kate Winters," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "6 months ago, I thought I needed a fake girlfriend to fool my family. What I actually needed was you, the real you, the magnificent, stubborn, brilliant, beautiful you, to save me from a life I didn't even realize I was sleepwalking through. Kate was already crying, which was terribly inconvenient since she was trying to pay attention to the most important moment of her life. I love your terrible morning hair and your obsession with Jane Austen. I love the way you argue with me about everything and the way you make friends with every cat in the neighborhood. I love that you see through all my walls and love me anyway. Michael, she whispered. Marry me, Kate. Not for 30 days, not for a contract, but for the rest of our beautifully chaotic lives. The ring was perfect, not ostentatiously large, but elegant and timeless, with a vintage setting that looked like it had been waiting decades for her finger. Yes, Kate sobbed, laughing through her tears. Yes, of course, you ridiculous, wonderful man. Dr. Cromwell applauded as Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, and Kate couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of getting engaged in a law office while their former contract burned symbolically in the fireplace. Well, she said, admiring her ring, this is definitely not how I imagined this moment. Nothing about us has gone according to plan, Michael pointed out, pulling her into his arms. Why start now? 3 hours later, they were sitting in their favorite cafe, the same one where Victoria had ambushed them all those months ago, planning their wedding. Small ceremony, Kate was saying, making notes on a napkin. Just family and close friends. Maybe in Cordelia's garden? Whatever you want, Michael agreed readily. Though I should warn you, Grandmother has already started planning. She's hired 3 different wedding planners to consult with each other. Kate groaned. She's going to turn our wedding into a royal coronation, isn't she? Probably. But she means well. She's just excited to finally have a granddaughter who doesn't make her want to hide her good china. Their peaceful planning was interrupted by a commotion outside. Through the cafe window, Kate could see a small crowd gathering around someone who was gesticulating wildly. Is that... Kate squinted through the glass. Mrs. Chen, Michael confirmed with amusement. And she appears to be lecturing someone. They went outside to investigate and found Mrs. Chen in the middle of what appeared to be a heated discussion with a young couple who looked like they were in the middle of a dramatic breakup. Love not about being right, Mrs. Chen was saying, waving her hands emphatically. Love about choosing to be wrong together sometimes. The young man looked exasperated. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but this really isn't... You think you know better than someone who'd been married 43 years? Mrs. Chen interrupted. You think love's supposed to be easy? Easy love not worth having. Kate bit her lip to keep from laughing, as the couple found themselves on the receiving end of Mrs. Chen's relationship wisdom. My neighbors, Mrs. Chen continued, pointing at Kate and Michael, they almost throw away perfect love because they think they know better than their hearts. Very stupid. But they learn. The young woman looked at Kate curiously. Are you two married? Engaged, Kate said, holding up her hand, as of about 3 hours ago. See, Mrs. Chen said triumphantly. They fight for love. You should fight for love too. Stop being dramatic children. The couple looked at each other, and Kate could see the exact moment they realized Mrs. Chen was right. The anger in their eyes softened into something warmer. I'm sorry, the young man said to his girlfriend. You're right. I have been working too much. And I'm sorry for throwing your laptop out the window, she replied sheepishly. Mrs. Chen beamed with satisfaction. Good. Now go make up properly. And invite me to your wedding. As the reunited couple walked away hand in hand, Mrs. Chen turned to Kate and Michael with a pleased expression. What? She asked innocently. World needs more happy endings. That evening, Kate and Michael hosted an impromptu engagement party in their apartment. Cordelia arrived with enough champagne to float a small yacht. Mrs. Chen brought homemade dumplings, and even some of Michael's colleagues from the company stopped by to celebrate. Speech! Someone called out, and the small crowd took up the chant. Michael raised his glass. 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted from life. Success, respect, and a quiet existence that wouldn't cause any trouble for anyone. He looked at Kate, his eyes warm with love and amusement. Then I met Kate, and she turned my entire world upside down. She challenged everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, about what makes life worth living. She made me realize that a quiet life isn't worth much if you don't have someone worth making noise with. Here's to making beautiful noise together, Kate added, raising her own glass. To Kate and Michael, Cordelia declared, and to love that's stronger than contracts. Later, after everyone had gone home and they were cleaning up champagne glasses and dumpling crumbs, Kate found herself thinking about that first day in Dr. Cromwell's office. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd said no to your proposal? She asked Michael. Michael considered this seriously. Honestly, I think I would have found another way to meet you. The universe seemed pretty determined to throw us together. The universe, or your grandmother? Same thing, really. Kate laughed, settling into his arms on their couch. Their couch, in their apartment, in their beautifully chaotic life together. I love you, Michael Blackthorne. I love you too, soon-to-be Mrs. Blackthorne. Outside their window, the city twinkled with thousands of lights, each one representing someone else's story, someone else's chance at love and happiness. But Kate only cared about their story, their love, their perfectly imperfect, happy ending. Fitzgerald jumped onto the couch and settled between them with a contented purr, as if to say that his work here was done. He'd brought his human and this acceptable human together, and now they could all live happily ever after. 1 year later, the wedding had been, despite their best efforts, a royal coronation. Cordelia had consulted with her 3 wedding planners, hired a symphony orchestra, invited half of New York society, and transformed the Blackthorne estate gardens into something that belonged in a fairy tale. Kate had pretended to be annoyed, but secretly she'd loved every over-the-top minute of it. Now, exactly 1 year after they'd signed their original contract, Kate and Michael were sitting in the same garden where they'd been married, watching their friends and family at Cordelia's 91st birthday party. Much smaller affair this year, Michael commented, gesturing to the mere 100 guests milling about. Practically intimate, Kate agreed, then squeezed his hand excitedly. Should we tell her now? Tell me what? Cordelia appeared beside their bench with the supernatural hearing of grandmothers everywhere. Kate and Michael exchanged glances. Then Kate took a deep breath. We're pregnant. Cordelia's champagne glass hit the ground with a musical crash, and her shriek of joy could probably be heard 3 blocks away. A great-grandchild, she exclaimed, pulling them both into a fierce hug. Oh, this is the best birthday present ever. When? How far along? Have you been to the doctor? Are you feeling well? Boy or girl? Oh, we'll need to redecorate the nursery. Grandmother, Michael laughed. Breathe. It's still very early. We just found out yesterday. Details, Cordelia waved dismissively. Mrs. Chen, she called across the garden. Mrs. Chen, come here. We're having a baby. We're having a baby? Mrs. Chen appeared with remarkable speed for someone her age. I knew it. I told my Harold, I said, those two, they going to make beautiful babies. When you do? And just like that, Kate found herself surrounded by excited well-wishers, all offering advice, predictions, and opinions about everything from nursery colors to baby names. Michael caught her eye over the crowd and mouthed, I love you. Kate mouthed back, I love you too. Later, as they walked home through the city streets, Kate reflected on how much her life had changed since that first terrifying day in Dr. Cromwell's office. Do you think, she asked Michael, our child will believe us when we tell them how we met? That Daddy paid Mommy to pretend to love him? Michael grinned. Probably not. It sounds like something out of a romance novel. The best love stories usually do. Michael stopped walking and pulled her into his arms right there on the sidewalk, just like he had on their first real night together. Kate Blackthorne, he said seriously, thank you for signing that ridiculous contract. Thank you for being worth falling in love with. And as they kissed under the streetlights, with the city bustling around them and their future stretching out bright and beautiful ahead of them, Kate couldn't help but think that sometimes the best deals were the ones that gave you everything you never knew you wanted. After all, she'd signed up for 30 days of fake love. Instead, she'd gotten a lifetime of the real thing. The end.